From this video, you're gonna be learning the following typical themes for the Jobava London. How to build up the initiative when black is trying to set up a blockade with f5. How to punish early c4 moves. How a completely symmetrical position can be better for white thanks to the more active bishop. How to develop the initiative against the Slav. And at the end of the video, we'll be dealing with the lines where black plays knight c7. Getting the white pieces against the 1900 opponent. Hopefully we can get an interesting game. I send bishop to f4. We see the Slav gonna be playing e3. In the case of bishop f5 doing the kingside play, he does go for e6 against this. We're switching to like the knight e5 plans. Bishop d3, queen h3. I think we're gonna be using that plan in this game. Goes knight e8. That's interesting. Don't think it's amazing, but he wants to set up f5, I think. Shall we start with g4? In some positions they have g5 that we want to watch out for. I think maybe it's not amazing now if they play it. Like gf and sack the piece. I think we're getting a lot of attack. Yeah, I'll follow my instinct. I don't think this is a good move now. If it is, I think it's kind of unlucky. And knight f6. Just taking, opening up the file. Play rook g1. Could have also castled, but it felt more useful to play rook g1 first. Maybe this is a threat already. Think about these positions is we have a lot of attacking potential. Some positions we can even sack on g7. Like for example, if the queen is placed on h3 and we have managed to castle, then rook g7 can be insta-mate. Yeah, I don't think we mind him taking on c3, but just for the sake of simplicity might play king e2, because knight e4 we take, pawn takes. Then maybe rook g7 is actually winning. So like rook g1 and then yeah, I think we do that. I'm debating him in going for this, and now I think we have the rook sack. That feels kind of mating. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm gonna be following my intuition. So rook g1 first of all is checking f6. I mean, that can't be a good move, but let's check it out. If bishop g5, king e6, queen h3, king d6, we have at least queen h6 winning. And now, yeah, if king back, there should obviously be like a mating attack now, somehow. Knight f7, bishop e5, I think it's just killing it. Yeah, and his king is just like trapped in the corner. Like this is the only move, but it still should be lost. And he also resigns, which, okay, I mean, I think that was a pretty cute idea that I've managed to put into action. We've got like a pretty brutal mating attack, which I would say it's typical for the Jobava. And the line I was trying to calculate here was this one. I've seen it till here, and yeah, I mean, this just looked crashing. Taking the queen. Getting the white pieces against 1900. Gonna be going for the good old Jobava. Getting knight c3 and then bishop to f4. Let's see how my opponent is willing to play. We see c5, just gonna be going e3. cd, ed, a6 is something I used to play quite a lot as black here. But c4, that doesn't feel right. I am not sure why. Like here, I haven't really checked this move, so I can't really tell you what you're supposed to do from a theoretical perspective, but My feeling is generally when you can play e4 against c4, it's always a good move. So here looks to be the case. And I think now we just play with e5 and we expand. Like ed doesn't make a lot of sense opening up his bishop. So I think we're just expanding. I can play knight f3. Kind of want to start pushing the h-pawn. It's definitely not a must, but this is really resembling a pawn structure that is typical for the French, and yeah, in the winner where we always tend to do that. Queen g4 looks pretty strong now, hitting the pawn. He has to make like an ugly king f8, I believe. And then we can use this idea. That is also very typical for the winner. And this is not only used to attack, but it's also keeping an eye on this knight just in case he has some queen a5 plans. The knight is well defended by the rook. So it's like a really nice multi-purpose move. And this is just lost, I think, for black, because this is coming and rook h7 still loses to bishop takes. And okay, f5, but I don't think this should be saving, although it's a good try, because if I was getting the rook to g3, that was just resignable. And okay, now if I play queen g6, his only move is to play queen e8. And I'm assuming those positions are much better for me anyways, like queen e8 and maybe knight f3 to h4. I've got like many plans. The thing is, I don't want to take. Maybe I should, but that allows knight takes on f6, and I have a feeling that his pieces are becoming quite active, which I'd like to avoid. Maybe I could also just step back with like queen e2. That might be the best. Is queen f3 worth it? I think just queen e2. The idea is that now we're gonna be playing knight f3, and we just want to get a knight to g6 while keeping queens on the board. So yeah, hitting the pawn, but we can defend, and also preparing that idea. Okay, before we go knight h4, we'll have to play queen d2, probably defending this guy, but it's not an issue. And he will most likely go knight e7, but his position looks pretty passive, so I'm really optimistic about rook g3, knight g6, and even though it doesn't seem to be like an immediate win, I think we'll have ideas to like open up the position with g4, just defending against bishop c3 now and preparing this move. He is trying that, but remember that the rook is also defending the knight in these lines, and this is big threat, so expecting knight e7. And after that, I think we simply play rook g3 and knight a4, possibly just rook b1. I think we're in full control now. This is like his only active move, but it's not really that hard to defend against. Just rook b1 and could play a3. On the next move, he's gonna be forced to do something with a bishop, and we have a winning position strategically speaking, because he's got like bad pieces. I'm really active. Yeah, just a3 now. He can go even knight c3, but I thought we can sacrifice the pawn because could get the rook to b7. Maybe even better to like pin him there, but okay, this is just the kind of strategically winning position that I had in mind because of the bad bishop. And yeah, like rook b7 is a threat. He goes b5. Wanted to play knight g6, but knight g6, rook g6, he maybe can take on c3. So Could potentially start with rook b4 as a defensive idea. The thing is, I could also play bishop e2, which seems kind of useful. Our pawn break will be g4, so we have to organize that somehow. Maybe just bishop e2, and in fact we don't even need to rush with knight g6. So perhaps just maybe playing rook e3 followed by g4. Yeah, you can do a6. We don't really mind that. It's a pity that we can't sack or force a mate there. But yeah, that is fine. Could also improve king's position. Get it to like g1 if needed. But I don't really think that's gonna be super helpful, because we're gonna be opening up the position with g4. So king on the g file might be exposed. Okay, I think I like the rook to e3, because after g4 taking, we might have ideas to push e6. That's why I put it there, because rook h3 was still preparing g4, but I feel like the rook on e3 could be potentially more useful. And now just g4. That was the idea. Threatening to take, and we're creating a weakness, and then the rook will probably return to g3, because it's putting pressure on the weak pawn on g7, and we have managed to open up the position, just taking with a bishop. This is now under attack. His king is becoming more vulnerable as yeah, pawns get traded off. Could go rook f3. I think that's like pretty unpleasant move to deal with. Putting the rook on the open file, and also having ideas of bishop e6. So I think he probably should play king there. But it's like a pretty uncomfortable move to play. I could do rook b4 just to deal with this knight c3 threat, so I can perhaps be more flexible with my queen. Do we have like the direct knight g6? Because like knight takes on g6, pawn takes, bishop takes. We can take on e6, and okay, he gets the bishop to e4, but just rook g3, g5, maybe bishop takes and queen takes. I don't know. I don't really want to force the issue without controlling everything, so perhaps that can wait for a bit. Maybe start bishop g3. Okay, I'm starting bishop g3, opening up rook's path, and maybe we can actually maneuver this knight to like f4, and then this bishop could be activated via h4. So yeah, I think that might be the best plan here. Plays rook f8, which is logical defending, but just knight g2, bringing the knight towards f4, targeting the weak pawn on e6, and this is also an idea to activate the bishop. So a nice motive could be to take and play knight f4, but I mean, you can just rook sack, so it's not good. Probably just gonna be playing knight f4, and then unlike bishop g8, I think bishop h4 will come nicely, because it's threatening to take on e7 and then exploit the weakness of the g6 square. And also, like, the exchange sack is not amazing for my opponent, because knight c3 I think can be met by simply queen back to d2, pinning the knight. So this is pretty huge threat, and I think only way to deal with it might be bishop f7, but I have a feeling that should also lose somehow. Maybe it's something like bishop e7, king e7, bishop e6, and Knight g6 winning the f8 rook. I think that's actually doing it. So yeah, this is honestly only move. Otherwise, I don't see a way for him to deal with this, followed by knight g6. Maybe he can try to run away with the rook, but it feels really unnatural and it's probably bad. Might be the best though. Because bishop f7, I think it loses by force at this point. Yeah, he plays it. Now, the question is, do we start with this or with bishop e7? Because like this, maybe he's got like rook f4 intermezzo, so probably just bishop e7 and then taking on e6. And I think this is the killer blow because we've got knight to g6 and he's unable to save the rook and whole position is collapsing. Just a deadly fork. Can't go to the a frank as we take with the rook, and against this I think taking with the knight is better. We check. Then we can take the bishop and okay, I mean he's trying this, but he can force the endgame, but it's still lost. And like knight c3, I think we've got rook back to f3, that wins. I think that's the cleanest. And in case of b4, ab, knight b1, ba5, knight e2, king d2 is winning. I'm assuming we can even sack the exchange there and play rook b7 with a win. Yeah, b4. This one though is definitely the simplest. What is it, like pawn takes on b4? Maybe he's got queen a2 as sort of the last bullet. Okay, I think sacking the rook might be simplest. And then just queen f4. This is pretty annoying. Maybe we can take the pawn on a3. But we have queen g3. Hitting this guy, and I don't see a way for him to defend it because this is also coming. And he lost on time, but I think was also losing at the position. Getting the white pieces once again. Going d4. Going for the Jobava London. We see d5 on the first move, bishop to f4. We see the super common e6 lines once again. Can be playing knight b5 and just e3. This is an important move. And then knight c3. This is big frat. Goes bishop b4. I've actually looked up these positions. Thing is, they can combine it with some kind of quick knight e4. You should take first, and then I like going knight f3, and when they go knight e4 we just sack the pawn, and white is getting a pretty good advantage. I've done some analysis in these positions. It's pretty hard for me to like recreate the whole thing, but I know we're supposed to sack the pawn. Okay, he takes this way, which is not good at all because he gave up the important bishop, and we've got good bishop against bad bishop type of situation. I would say castling, maybe just c4 on the next move. Maybe don't need to play c4, I don't know. Maybe c4, c5. This is a thing. Could play queen d3 with that. He might be taking it. Actually, queen e1 in some positions is a decent move. Because queen d3, maybe c5 could be tempting for my opponent. For some reason, I don't know, the engine likes queen e1 in some positions. How to tell which one is the important bishop? That's a pretty good question. You just have to look at the squares. Like, this bishop is covering them. And now after this smart move, all of the squares just lost their control. So I can't really get to them easily, but if I do, it's gonna be a disaster. If we do queen e1, can't really decide now. Maybe it's one of those positions where we can just play knight e5 and counterattack. Might be one of those. Shall we play knight e5? I think we just go for the counter. Queen e1 looked a bit passive, even though I remember seeing that idea, but maybe like that could be the downside of having opening preparation. You have the feeling that you've seen something similar at some point, but in your actual game, that idea has nothing to do with the position in reality, and you can't pick up natural good moves because you have one thought directed to that stupid idea that you've seen in your prep like months ago. Sure, like we can remember that, right? This Queen e3, I think it's fine. I don't see why to play Queen e1 in this position. Attacking the knight and collecting the pawn on c6. Equal material, but we do have a slightly better pawn structure. Do we want to play f3 first and get rid of that knight? That is a pretty good question, I think. Let's take first. Not sure how he's willing to react here, because on queen b6 maybe we can like throw in the check. That looked pretty tempting, followed by c4 ideas. We see queen there. Now I could also even retreat with a knight and gain a tempo. In some position this might not be such a bad move. Like, this is the kind of move that computer would do. They just play knight b8. Should we play like a computer and then just take the pawn on a6? Let's play like a computer. Do not try this at home, guys. Just play knight back to e5. This might very well backfire. I'm not sure if it's such a clever move, but on queen b5, I have rook b1 as a good reply. So, oh, that's actually a blunder, but I can use the other rook. Yeah, so if I do this, he takes and he goes for the fork. Can use the other rook and it will no longer be a fork on d2. So my idea was that I can force him to trade and we get rid of this knight. So it felt kind of like a good idea. Maybe he's got like knight c3, we have to play rook b2, covering that square. But his bishop is kind of restricted by the knight on b8. It's like a pretty funny picture. So I think this actually might end up as being a pretty instructive game if we don't blunder that knight on b8. So important to go here, not allow knight e2 takes on f4. That would be pretty ugly. Maybe that was fine. I'm like not sure, because in that position his bishop is like kind of restricted, but I don't see a way to take advantage of it. So I guess this could just play rook c2, like my knight is well defended, and okay, could also go rook b4. So like rook c2 expecting bishop b7. Maybe I just have rook b1 and that looks crashing, like, yeah. Okay, I have a cute tactic as well, because if they take on b8, I'll have rook b7. The knight on b8 is actually pretty well placed right now, but it is not not an easy situation to like recognize and apply it yourself. I would suggest like normally to stay away from this, but I thought in this position was like too good not to play it. How do we continue though? He wants this move. Could play a4. And the idea is if knight e7 I have rook c8 and then we take. End up having the two minors. And on bishop d7 we have a5 and we win. Maybe he plays a5 himself, but then knight c6 and we tackle that pawn. Goes h5, but just a5 and rook c8 take. I think that's a win now. With the two minors. It's not the most trivial win ever, but I think it is. Okay, maybe what if knight b8? Is that doable? Maybe knight b8 was though, well, probably still worse. Now we get the two minors. This should generally be a theoretical win because his rooks are not able to really activate. We're doing really well in terms of material. Yeah, rook c2, but only one rook is getting active, which shouldn't be an issue. It gets problematic if he manages to like double up on the b file somehow. I mean on the second rank by using the b file, but that is not a thing because my bishop is pretty well placed. Also, if he can't really like try out anything on the king side. We shouldn't take because of the mate, but just like h4, fixing the pawns. Minors against the rooks are better in this position, for sure. This is just completely winning for white. Like the minors, it's if generally in these positions, if the rook has a passed pawn to work with, I mean if the rook, not the rooks, let's say it's a rook and a pawn against two minors, that could easily be winning if you have a passed pawn. But generally if you don't have the passed pawn, you're kind of doomed. Okay, so if I take, he wants to double, I have bishop g3, but then maybe he has a bit of annoying stuff, so start with this. Yes, they are restricted, and also the rooks are not really having a lot of targets here, like all my pawns are defended. Usually when you're having these positions, you should try to keep your rook. That is the rule. Like trading a pair of rooks would be helping the defending side, which is black here. So like keeping the rook is gonna be helping you build up the initiative together with these two pieces as a general rule. It's also quite specific about, yeah, the position, but generally keeping the rook should help. And do we wanna grab that pretty insignificant pawn? I'm not sure I wanna do that. Would love to activate my king like Nigel Short fashion. Okay, let's place the bishop to e5. I think now it's well placed there. Like on the previous move, I couldn't have done that because he had f6. Now maybe bishop f6, just restricting his king. Yeah, I mean, then he would have this, but then we have knight d7, so bishop there, king g8. And how is that position? Maybe we have like a tricky rook c1, but then king e7. This feels like a good move. King g8, and then how do we make progress? I think it's a nice move. We might have to allow him to trade, but we are gonna be bringing the king over in this fashion. Whenever they try to attack this pawn, we'll have bishop d8 to defend. He goes there, which is somewhat expected. Okay, not like the easiest conversion ever, but we should be getting it eventually. I can sack the f2 pawn, but I don't really want to do that. If I go rook f1, he's got rook b8. That's kind of annoying. Yeah, I don't love that. I guess I'll just play the natural moves by now. I don't think we have time to like double check everything and try to play it precise. Yeah, it might not be so simple to win as I initially thought. It's for sure winning, that I can tell, but it's not the most obvious plan ever. Okay, starting with taking the pawn should be good, and he doesn't have an amazing move now, like rook b3 and then go to knight c7, but then king d7, so just knight back. And okay, I mean, now we get the pawn to a6 and it's clearly a win because he has no counterplay. Like in some scenarios, if he's able to win my a pawn, that could give him counterplay, but now he's completely doomed. This knight is holding everything together, and trade and bring the king. Now it's just like a super easy win. I mean, king can't make moves, rook can't attack stuff. This is just really nice right now. Just look at his king, he's got like no moves. Pretty funny. Gonna be doing this soon. Okay, maybe as rook b2 I'll have to play king f3. Was a bit inaccurate, perhaps, but it's no big deal. Yeah, just g3 and then e4. We can like take all the time here, win it slow. Okay, but like no counterplay. This is defended, as I was saying earlier. Now we do this and that. Slowly breaking through. This is also defended, so no worries about that. And we can undouble. I kind of like taking this way because I don't know. I think both moves are winning at this point, and now just push the d pawn. Get it all the way to d8. No, I blundered. And he missed the blunder. Jesus fuck. Might have still been a win though. Might have still been a win. So the line was like this. But after king c7, how do you want to stop the pawn? That was actually 300 IQ blunder. Okay, we can still do it like d4 and he can still take my bishop. Are we allowing it? Okay, let's go for it. Gonna be getting the king in. Oh, he's got king e7. Jesus Christ. It was actually not a 300 IQ blunder. I'm so bad. Up the knight e4 on king e7 and we win. I'm so confused. Okay, king e7, knight b7 even. Yeah, I think we've got it. Okay, the 300 IQ blunder worked. Yay, there you have it. Not the smoothest win ever, but we did it. So you see this position, he just played queen d7, and I told you that he could just go knight e5 and that is perfectly doable, but it turns out that this knight b8 move was also very interesting objectively speaking, and could also have played f3. What I did was also fine, and yeah, I think we were just crashing from that point. Yes, I really love this game. This might be one of the nicest that I've got so far in the rating climb. Okay, c4 was also doable. I was not sure what if they take 95 and now queen d5. Yeah, we might have f3 that I forgot about. But like I think this one with getting the knight to b8 is just like so aesthetic, and then the knight is just staying there like a thorn in black's position forever. Then we get this small combination. So like knight b8, as I was saying, this was a move, but he's just paralyzed now. I knew it should be lost. Here game, having the white pieces. Let's get him with the Jobava. Just playing knight c3, getting the bishop out to f4. Let's see what opponent has in store for us. So he's really inviting me to play e3, but we're not gonna be doing that. I think we're just gaining a tempo in the normal lines. Let's start h4. Let's be tricky. He should play bishop g6 though, and it's kind of the same or that. Yeah, just g4. So you could do that, but you don't have to. We'll get the bishop to d3, and I think we're keeping options of g5 available. We take with a queen normally. Some people like to take with a pawn, but not me. I'm a guy that takes with a queen always. Gonna be castling. Knight e2 next. Really easy play. E4. I mean, if they castle, g5 is looking pretty sweet. Still g5. Still could take and d4 with a threat of e5. I think I like that. Just taking space in the center. I don't think they can really go after that pawn on g4. We have e5 followed by queen g3. And yeah, just gaining space. Pushing f4, f5 next. If c5, we have knight b5, and against that, I don't think we really mind that. Just going f5 with idea to take. I'm just playing super aggressive chess right now. If b4, we could go knight a4. Potentially, might also just take one e6, bc. Taking one f7 looks interesting. Okay, when they play moves like knight f8, it's generally not a good sign for them. Just knight f4, and on b4 we'll have this as a move. Also could be very decently placed on a4, blocking any potential counterplay. Goes to d7. Well, if I take, maybe he wants knight takes. I think rook f1 is like a useful move. I think we're gonna be opening up that file at some point, so definitely a move that I like. Maybe should have started with knight h5. Could still do it now. Like, is he really gonna play rook g8? I'd be shocked to see that. Okay. There we go. This looks like so winning. So like g6? Jeez, I can't believe you can get away with it. Let's take once. And then we're gonna be... Okay, so he takes with a knight. That is kind of careless. I thought we have queen h7. So my idea was to play pawn takes on e6. I had a pretty bad move in mind. I wanted to play rook f6. Not sure that made any sense, but it looked interesting with the idea to double. Probably it was just bad, but now we get queen h7, and I think we should be winning material unless king f8 somehow holds. But that would be really surprising if it did. Maybe king f8, the same stupid rook f6 move is not that stupid. So like rook f6, they move the queen away. I don't know, like e7, let's say. How do we continue? I mean, I could just play rook f3 and sort of the same. Could also just bring this knight. I mean, once we get that knight over there, I'm pretty sure it's game over. For some reason, I refuse to do that. But I think it's finally time to just like bring last piece into the game and basically win it. Knight e6, just knight f4. So he wants to take and play knight c7, but that's just too slow, and also this is huge threat. So only move to take. But like knight c7 is just not in time because I have this move, and he's got issues with the f7 pawn that are yeah, quite unpleasant. I think maybe this is an idea to hold, but I don't think it works. Okay, that is interesting. By the way, you could also use this pawn as an attacker, but I think we start this way. I wanna make him watch out for rook f7, and now that we did that, is knight f6 a move? Perhaps rook f6. So in knight f6, pawn takes, rook takes. Queen e7. I mean, that just feels winning to me. I think we'll do it. Can't really calculate, but my intuition says it's winning. Should be winning because we're opening up the king side. Wish I could calculate more than two first moves. That would have been a pretty useful skill to have in a game of chess. But I'm gonna use the good old intuition. That usually fails me pretty drastically. But this just looked like game over, and the main line that I had a look on was this one after rook f7. Queen f7, rook f7, rook f7. Okay, I mean he just resigns, but I'm not sure it's like even a win. How do we win on rook g7? Is that a win? Insane. Oh yeah, this is the win. Okay, so rook g7 with check, take on h6, and then take on f7. And okay, I mean knight f6, not a bad move. It just wins apparently. Wow, this was such a good game, man. I don't know. There must be something wrong with me today, because I am able of making more than 3 decent moves in a row, which is usually not the case. Getting the white pieces. Let's go d4. Try to get an interesting fight in the Jobava. We see e6, not interested in the French defense, just getting our normal stuff in. We get one of the most common positions of the Jobava London, where it's important to start with knight b5. Normally you'll see this knight a6 move that just got played. Important to start with e3, so after knight c3, this is a pretty big positional threat, and normally they do this knight c7 move that you see. We'll get a knight to e5, and then we're gonna be playing for long castle with queen f3. Yeah, this next, in case of c5, we just take it. And I really enjoy playing this type of positions as white. I think we have a very good potential of creating an attack on the king side. Another nice idea could be bishop d3 and queen h3, keeping an eye on that square. Could also just castle and then go g4, g5, throwing in bishop d3. Not sure about that move, because I don't think he's gonna be taking there. Maybe he has in mind to play bishop b4. That could be a good idea that I might have missed, because it could have been combined with knight e4 if I move the knight. So I made like a lot of quick moves. Now it's actually time to buckle down and come up with a plan. So this is like a pretty big threat now. You never really want to play a3 in this situation, just in case you wondered. We don't do that. And might have rushed with this. I think it was maybe perhaps a bit more precise to delay it a bit, but I'm not sure. Because like doing something such as, yeah, king b1, bishop b4, knight e2 doesn't feel right, but maybe it is. And we just will kick out the bishop with c3, and yeah, like knight e4, just play c3 anyways. He wants knight e2, so just gonna block that. And then we get a knight to g3. Have to say though, this is not necessarily the type of game that I wanted. But if they play f5, I think we've got a good position after takes. Yeah, because it's a big difference. We have the knight on e5 and they'll have a pawn on the e4 square. So we've got like huge advantage now, and we can maybe simply go queen g3. And the idea would be to push the h-pawn down the board. This doesn't really make much sense now because that's defended, and we're just using this plan. Could also be breaking with f3 if I'm like more ambitious to like break the center. Could also play bishop e2. I think I'll just go bishop e2. Not sure, I actually don't think we need the move, but I want to see what he comes up with. Maybe he'll play knight d6 trying to get f5, but on knight d6 Maybe we can go for this small trick and take on c6, collect the pawn. We're opening up the b file, but as long as we have the dark square bishop around, this will never be a move because we can take it. And if they take, we're happy to see it. Maybe, yeah, I don't really like bishop e2. I think I should have started h4, but I think it's kind of such a good position that you can take the timeout and play bishop e2. Just gonna push now. I think he's trying, not sure what, with queen a4. Maybe he wants knight e6 without really getting into this knight c6 things. Maybe that's what he wants. Knight e6 with knight f5. I think that was a good idea for him, but looks like he's just trying to push the pawns. I think he should be a bit slower than us. Maybe we've got this idea to plan the knight to g6 next. Might not be working if he goes knight d6. Maybe it's playable even in that case. So like knight d6, knight g6. Okay, this is really big strategical concession, because just look at this guy on e5. Pretty funny. So we could take and play h6, but he's got like rook a7 as a defensive move. Don't really want to bring his rook, but might not have a choice. It's pretty funny because we're almost trapping that queen. Can we actually go b3 and somehow find a queen trap? I don't see it. So the thing is, if we start h6, but I mean that's should be winning. So just h6 is the move, and now this is kind of crushing. They have to play king f7, but I don't believe you can resist like that for long. And I think we have a nice combination to sack the queen and then promote our pawn in the following lines. So you see that his attack is much slower. Like when he gets b4, I'm like already mating him, so that doesn't really help. But with this monster on e5, I mean, all the games are winning. You can just take, that is the easy way. Take with a queen, could also, this is also doable, and then queen g6. That's even nicer. Okay, I mean, he pre-moved it, but like rook takes ahead. Queen g6, and if rook g7, I take on e8 with mate, and otherwise I'm winning the house. And on this we get a new queen, obviously. Opponent doesn't resign. Well, just rook h7. I've got two. Oh! And he misses mate in one. Jeez, I had a heart attack there. What was this? That was hilarious. Wow. Okay, he resigns, fine. That is the logical outcome of the game, okay? That was the logical outcome. Insane. Crazy stuff. Like, I just relaxed in this position because I knew it's like so winning, and that happens when you don't look on the actual board. Can miss mate in one out of nothing. Thanks a lot for making it this far into the video, and if you're looking for more content, make sure to check out some of the previous episodes from the same series.